Carol, I can't think of a favorite plant for this week's episode.
Well, how about pansies and violas?
That's your answer to everything. I'm going to start this episode before we get too far down that rabbit hole. Welcome to the Garden Angelist, where we talk about flowers, veggies, and all the best dirt. I'm Dee Nash from Guthrie, Oklahoma, where I garden 1.5 acres out of 7.5 acres out in the country.
And I'm Carol Michael from Indianapolis, Indiana. I have a suburban garden measured in square feet. It's about 1/3 of an acre.
We call ourselves Garden Angelists because we are evangelists for gardening. We love gardening, and we want you to love it too.
Yes, we do. And we aren't afraid to spill the beans and tell all of our gardening secrets, the good, the bad, and even the ugly. But that's enough of who, what, when, where. Let's move on to this week's episode. Hello, Dee.
Hello, Carol. I'm going to guess that you didn't get a lot done this week since we recorded on Monday and it's now Friday. But what did you get done?
Well, I didn't get that much done. You are correct. I kept stuff watered in the front. I kind of stopped watering on the back patio. Nobody sees that very much anyway. And I thought, I just don't have time. But anyway, the big news was Tuesday morning, which was the 10th.
Yeah, you texted me with this big news. It kind of made me sad.
We had a very light frost. You could see it on the rooftops, and I got out early enough that I could see it on some of the leaves. It didn't kill anything, but it definitely sent the signal that said, it's over, kids.
Time to change color, trees.
Time to change the colors. So I took a few pictures and, I went to garden club. Does that count as gardening?
I think it counts as gardening. Heck yeah.
Yeah. So one of our members brought some hardy begonias from her garden, which sometimes, people dig up extra plants.
Yeah.
And nobody wanted it. And I'm like, well, if nobody takes it, I'll take it. So I was in the social hour part and she plops it down and she says, it's yours now, Carol.
You know what? I forgot to tell you that in Philadelphia and Delaware, where we were for the fling, there were tons of hardy begonias. It's the first time I've really seen it in a garden, and they were everywhere. So very popular plant.
Yeah. So now I've got some more. I already had some. So I said, I'll find a spot for it. So I did intend to get that planted, but did not get that planted. But I will this week. How about your garden?
So I didn't do much between Monday and Friday, but I did go out and thin my kale seedlings, my black kale. It's already up. It's very happy doing its thing. I need to harvest my spinach. I haven't done that. Maybe I'll do that today. I met with a client, and then I'm meeting with a client today after this for garden coaching. And then I'm meeting with a client tomorrow who I had to move back because of the wedding and stuff. So I'm waiting. I still haven't planted my pansies and I still have them just sitting in their tray.
Okay.
I still haven't planted.
Wait a minute, listeners,
from the Native Plant Festival.
Never mind. Nothing. Never mind.
Don't give me a hard time. I'm doing the best I can. I've been a little busy.
You know what? Those hardy begonias have been sitting out there for 2 or 3 days. So I know. I'll get them in the ground today.
This is part of the ugly. Whatever. The good, the bad, or is this the bad? It could be the bad.
So since the intro, have you thought of a favorite?
Yeah, I did think of one. So the heath asters. I talked about bluebird aster last week. I talked about it on Instagram. I'm probably going to talk about the heath asters this week. But here's the thing. So heath asters are Symphyiotrichum erisoides, right? And so they're white. And there's a really famous, it's famous in Philadelphia. Nobody here grows it, but it's called snow flurry. And I have it in my garden because I was walking past Wild Things Nursery and I at a show, and she had it, Marilyn had it there. And I said, what is this? And she goes, oh, it's a ground hugging aster. And I said, I think I need that. So I bought that. And then I have this light lavender aster, which might actually be Symphyiotrichum turbinellum, maybe. Right? Because when you start getting into asters, it gets a little bit tricky. I bought that from Bustani several years ago, and it has nicely reseeded itself throughout the garden. So I'd have to say Snow Flurry and whoever this lavender aster is are my 2 favorites.
Very nice.
What are yours?
Well, my favorite is much easier. I wasn't going to buy mums, and I did buy a yellow mum the other week. And I plopped that
3.
I plopped that on the front porch in a container that didn't have anything in it. I just plopped that in there. and let it go. And it's instant color. It just sort of announces fall is here. It just kind of pops right out. It's a beautiful thing. It's in full bloom. So that's my favorite.
Yes. I put those 3 yellow mums in containers in my shade garden in the front bed every year, the front border. And that's why, exactly what you said. Pop of color, says fall is here. It's cheerful. Ta-da.
And no, I do not plan to plant it out in the garden. I plan to chuck it into the compost pile.
That's where it needs to go after it's done. Would you like to do the first quote?
I would. In the entire circle of the year, there are no days so delightful as those of a fine October, no days so calm, so tenderly solemn, and with such a reverent meekness in the air. Alexander Smith.
That has to be Alexander Smith, who wrote the #1 ladies. Wasn't his name Alexander Smith? #1 ladies detective agency. Maybe I'm getting that mixed up.
I think so. I mean, I think he puts his middle name in there too.
Yeah, McCall, isn't he? No, this is a different guy. He's a poet and essayist. He was born at Kilmarnock. I don't know where that is. Kilmarnock. Well, anyway, he was born in December 1829 and he died in 1867. So not the same guy I thought it was, which just goes to show why you should look these things up. Huh?
It does go to show.
Okay, our flower is the native asters, the ones that you should grow in our part of the world. And so I like what you wrote here. You should say it.
Before we get going on this, let us agree we're going to call them asters and not by that horrible new genus name that they were given several years ago, Symphyotrichum. Is that what it is?
I pronounce it Symphyotrichum, but yeah, whatever.
Symphyotrichum. We're not, we're going to say aster.
Okay, from here on out, we're going to say asters because the American asters got that new name. They used to be asters. So if you had, aster, whatever. But now they're that other name, most of them. Okay, so you have that one of the asters we probably both grow is Aster Novae Angliae, which is the New England aster. I have a couple. They don't love it here.
I have quite a few. So this is, I'm pretty sure my Aunt Marjorie gave me this as a pass-along plant. And I just let it reseed in the garden. And I went out there this morning and it's in 4 or 5 places. Sometimes it reseeds itself in a little bit of shade and it doesn't get very big. And then, I just let it go. And I feel like I'm just going to let it go to seed because it is quite easy to pull out if you don't like it. And I did have one and we all call her Alma Potchke. She's a dark pinkish red. She has disappeared because I think that area is where I have a bunch of other native plants.
Somebody overran her.
And it's kind of getting to be a bit shaded.
It's too shady.
Well, between the shade and somebody overrunning her, Alma has disappeared from the garden. She's beautiful though.
So here's the thing. I had Alma Potchke for a long time and she tried to take over this year. And she's the one I dug out and put in all the other stuff, the echinacea and other things.
Right.
So I dug her out but she was beautiful. And I have another one that is in this class.
So is she completely gone?
She's gone. I let her go. She needed to go. She was causing me issues. She was taking over whole sections of the garden. And I was like, oh, Alma, goodness, girl, you need to cut back on the carbs. And I have another one that is a really pretty pink one. Don't remember the name of it, but it's part of this group. And then you mentioned the oblongifolium, which is aromatic.
Oblongifolium, which is the aromatic aster. And this one,
those can be rude.
A lot of people plant October skies.
I have October skies. It's fabulous.
And that is what this is. Now, I had October skies in front. And it got a fungus disease or something on it, and it died out. So I would like to try it again in another spot because
a different spot, yeah.
It is not quite blue, but it is quite blue.
In fact, I will go out and take a picture of it for the newsletter because I've got it blooming, and it is definitely on the blue side of purple, and not the red side.
And it's also much shorter than the species of the aromatic aster. I think it tops out at maybe 2 feet.
Yeah, it's not very big. I mean, it's big wide, but it's not very tall. And then I had an aromatic aster that I also found that was rude. It was just a regular aromatic aster, and it was taking over. You know, they like clay. Those aromatic asters like clay soil. And if they're in a clay soil area and get a little water from the drip irrigation, they take off like gangbusters. So I dug up all but about this much. Well, nobody can see what I'm showing her. So how big is that circle?
3-inch circle,
Yeah, it was this big.
3 feet.
Yeah. And if you if you try to dig an aster out of clay that's 3 feet wide, you really wish it would just go away. So there's that.
So
one.
let's back up a minute, because so far we've said that the New England aster seeds itself all over Carol's garden.
Yes.
And you had to get rid of Alma Potchke because she took over.
Was rude. Mm-hmm.
And now we're saying that the October skies, you had problems with it.
Not October skies. It was just one of the
species.
One of the species. Yeah, it wasn't
of the
October
aromatic
skies.
aster. That is, that is one thing that asters do.
Yeah, Drummond's aster is notorious because it had, and we haven't even written that one down on here. So I'm going to look up what its actual name is. Well, is it Drummondi? Yeah, that's right.
I think so.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. Drummondi. Okay, so Drummond aster in my garden is a nemesis. I bought it years ago, and I won't say where because we're friends, and I still am friends with this person, even though this person sold me this aster. It has rhizotomous roots. And so, so it wants to take over. I think it would be great in a prairie garden with goldenrod, rhizotomous goldenrod right next to it. And they
let them fight it out.
Yeah, they could battle for dominance, and no water except for what God gives them. Because you give it any water, oh my goodness. I dig that up all the time and kill it and try all kinds of things. And I now know it by sight. And the minute, like I'll be working on it this winter. That's how bad it is. So there's that. And then there's the well-behaved asters. And one of those is bluebird. It's a smooth aster. Very easy to grow.
Aster laevis.
Yes. Bluebird is a selection of smooth aster. It was found in a Guilford, Connecticut garden, Mount Cuba Center, which is an I always want to say arboretum, but it's not. It's a botanical garden, and it is in Delaware. And they actually tested a whole bunch of asters. If I can find the link, I'll put it in our newsletter. And they found that bluebird is their favorite. It tested number one. Here's the thing about bluebird.
Yeah, what about bluebird?
It has little rosettes of leaves like Drummond does, a little rosette down at the bottom. And then it shoots up these big, long stalks. And then at the top of the stalks are these gorgeous, puffballs of flowers. Those long stalks, it really wants to arch and just hang over the side and stuff like that. And I stake it. But when I did the video, somebody came out and said, and I'm sorry, I don't remember who, said that the deer had eaten her several times. And she said it turned into a nice round shape. So maybe that's what I need to do is just pretend I'm deer and cut it back several times in the summer.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So you brought up the Mount Cuba Gardens.
Yeah, Mount
Botanical
Cuba
Garden. Well, and that brought to mind, and I looked it up real quick, the Chicago Botanic Garden. These kinds of gardens, they do trials of a lot of these perennials and these perennial asters and stuff. And so they'll periodically send out a thing that says, hey, here's the ones that really did well. And so I would encourage listeners, before you just go out and buy all kinds of asters, because they can be thuggish.
They can.
Check out local botanical gardens and see what's growing well and what they say about some of these things.
So for you, that would be Chicago, right? It's closer.
That's the closest would be Chicago Botanic Garden.
So for us, it'd be Mobot, Missouri Botanical Garden. Yes. They often do them too. Although Mount Cuba, to me, and Chicago, those two do more plant trials than anybody that I know of. I mean, that's where we get a lot of our scientific information when we write, and always giving.
And the Chicago Botanic Garden, you and I both visited eons ago, and I remember seeing the trial gardens, and they literally have the plants all lined up so they can observe them and see what happened. And they usually observe them over several seasons, so they don't just plant it and then 2 months later form their opinion and write it down. They really are very careful about it.
Right. And it's not promotional at all. And so, it's while I love all American selections, that's about new things that are coming out, and this is about it might be old things and new things. The one I'm thinking of in particular is Chicago Botanic Garden did a really great one on Phlox paniculata, where they looked at which ones get diseases and all that kind of stuff. So they do a good job, and they compared a bunch of old cultivars to a bunch of new ones. Of course, since then, there's been an explosion in Phlox paniculata. They need to do it again, but they don't listen.
Which reminds me, in the current issue of American Gardener, our friend Marianne Wilburn has an article about independent plant trials in support of them and why we need more of them. And
yeah, that was a really good article, and I'm glad you brought it up. I forgot about that one. And
another good reason to become a member of the American Horticultural Society, and they do not pay us to say that.
They don't pay us anything unless we write for them. And they're just exacting in, well, she's written her deal is a whole series that she's written all year or 2 years. And it's been really good because she talks about just different areas of horticulture that you don't think about. So it's worth joining.
In defense of
horticulture.
And I saw online she got shortlisted by the Garden Media Guild over in the UK.
Yeah, she did.
Garden Writer of the Year, that's a huge big deal.
It is a huge big deal. Couldn't happen to a nicer person either. We earlier mentioned in my playing favorites, Aster eriosoides. I really do like those. The heath asters are pleasantly receding. Snow flurry just sits there. It is spread slightly since I planted it, I don't know, 4 years ago. And I've actually been looking for more of it. So I talked to Marilyn about that when I saw her.
All right. So let's wrap up this aster thing. If you're going to buy asters for your garden, do make sure they're native. There are some Asian asters out there, but you don't want those.
You don't want them. You can do the native ones. They're better for us anyway.
Named varieties are usually pretty good. They are sometimes just selections of the native plant. There's not a lot. I don't think there's a lot of breeding going on, but I could be wrong. Bluebird's an example of a selected variety.
And then asters do like to self-sow, especially the native ones, but most of them are easy to pull out. Aster drummondii is not. It is a little bit of work. And then taller asters like the New England asters can be whacked back in late spring to encourage branching and more flowers on shorter stems. And also, I have the Tartarian aster. That's the only one I have now that's not native.
Asian.
I do love that aster, but I have Jindai, but that's it. And then I have one that is Hella Lacey, named after Alan Lacey's wife, but it's native. It's a selection that was found in his garden. So there you go. Asters, we like them.
All right. Do a quote.
Life starts all over again when it gets crisp in the fall. F. Scott Fitzgerald. And our vegetable ties in to a book by a friend of ours.
Yes. So it's How to Forage for Wild Foods Without Dying by Ellen Zakos. An absolute beginner's guide identifying 40 edible wild plants. And so what this book reminded me of is, if a lot of people don't want to grow vegetables, Dee, they're not our friends. I don't understand it. But if you planned your landscape well, you could plant stuff out in your garden that you could forage from, and then you could eat out of your garden.
Well, that's what Ellen does. She, in her garden, which it's a small garden now because she lives in Santa Fe, everything in her garden is edible. Everything. So she does not grow anything that she can't eat. And we're talking about edible things like, I think cannas. I think she has cannas. She had daylilies. She has Jerusalem artichokes. So they're ornamental, but also edible. And in here, I'm glad she came out with this book because I bet it has plantain in it. And plantain is a beekeeper's best friend for many reasons.
Well, I will see if it has plantain.
I tried to identify plantain. I can't tell you how many pictures I sent to Ellen. She was like, no, that's blah, blah, blah. No, that's not it either. So I hope plantain's in there.
It's not.
It's not. Well, there you go.
It
must not be one of the easy ones.
Yeah, it must not be one of the easy ones. I'm going to say pokeweed is in here.
Well, pokeweed is easy, but you do want to boil it before you eat it. And don't eat the berries. That's a bad idea. I have pokeweed in abundance right now. You want to know why?
Because of the fire.
It's a pioneer plant. And so it comes in and recultivates your area after a fire. I have it, and I also have the sunflowers. The sunflower seeds are edible, I'm sure.
Yes, they are. I think other parts of
I think sunflowers are edible. Yeah. I mean, as anything you want to eat.
I was going to say you can do sunflower microgreens.
You could.
You can. I mean, you can. I have the seeds.
I bet you do.
So a couple of things I came up with. There are a couple of weeds. Of course, dandelions. This is a good reason not to use a bunch of herbicides on your lawn because dandelions are completely edible. I've never eaten them knowingly.
They taste like lemon. They're pretty good. They're actually they sell them in Europe. We've talked about this before, that in European grocery stores, they are a delicacy. And I noticed the other day when I went to Natural Grocer, which is our natural store, that they had them. And I just laughed because I have them in my yard. So if I want to eat them, I just eat them.
Well, as I tell people, the dandelions bloom for a couple of weeks and then they just kind of disappear into the lawn. So,
yeah, I don't dig them up. But if you were hungry and you needed something to eat, that would work. So what is Virginia waterleaf?
So it's a weed that comes out of the woods, kind of likes a shady, moist area. And I have it in my garden because I did a wildflower rescue, I don't know, 12, 13 years ago when my brother was going to dam up area in a wooded lot that he owned at the time. Mm-hmm. And Virginia waterleaf just kind of came in. So it's really easy to pull out. I did not realize that the leaves are edible. And it has a really pretty light purplish flower. But I'm constantly pulling that out. And I thought, oh, Ellen will tell me don't throw that away, Carol. You should eat that.
Yeah, she would. And then there's acorns from oak trees. And one time she made me beautiful muffins, which were made with acorn flour, but you have to leach them. So one of the nice things in this book is that she shows you how to prepare things so you don't hurt yourself when you eat them.
Yes. And I heard her speak and she talks about one way, because when you leach the acorns, you have to constantly be changing out the water.
You have to change the water. Mm-hmm.
And so where does the water constantly change out?
I don't know.
In the back of the toilet tank.
Oh,
so you could
really?
She said you can hang it's going to sound bad. You can hang a bag of acorns in the toilet tank. And then every time you flush, fresh water comes in and leaches them. Now, if you hang one of those little things in there to clean it, don't do that. But that is fresh water. So
hadn't thought about that. There you go.
But are we going to do that, Dee?
Oh,
we're not.
No, because to me they taste like almond flour, and so I'll just use almond flour.
Well, the scarlet oak out front is having a mast year. I have never seen so many acorns in all my born days on one tree. Well,
there you
I'm
go.
not eating them. Crab apples.
Me neither. So crab apples I actually have eaten. I've had crab apple jelly and crab apple jam. Really jelly, because there really isn't any jam to make fruit, but it's good. I mean, it's tart. It's delicious. And you said that there's a story it reminds you of.
Well, when Martha Stewart had to go to prison for a while for insider trading, there's a story about how she foraged crab apples on the prison grounds and then tried to make like jelly in a microwave with them. It could,
she probably did do it.
Could be just a Martha legend, but that was the story that she was trying to show people how to make jelly out of crab apples in prison.
She might have.
And then do you have stats?
Yes, actually it's in Business Insider. I looked it up really quickly. It's in Business Insider, and she actually said that she passed her time in jail making ceramics and jam out of the crabapple trees. So there you go.
Anyway.
Of course, she's been known to start a legend for herself. Okay. And what's another one?
Well, another one that I read about, because we had this in our backyard back in the corner, was sumac.
I have it everywhere.
But the fruit is edible.
Okay. Well, no, I'm not doing that because I don't want to. But you're supposed to be careful of it if you have cashew allergies, because I guess they're related.
Yeah,
somehow.
They're in the same plant family. But anyway, I
just like to look at them.
Yeah, they have stunning fall foliage. They're very pretty in the fall.
They are. And guess what they are? A pioneering plant. So on my neighbor's property, which burned to the ground. I mean, everything she had burned to the ground. I think there's 2 trees left out of hundreds. There is sumac everywhere. I looked over there the other day and I was like, dang, that's going to be bright red in a couple of
That's
weeks.
pretty.
Yeah, that will be pretty. I hope she leaves a few of them.
So anyway, that's just a few ideas from this book. You could also use this as a handbook to go out and forage.
You could.
So
it's built that way.
It is built that way. Tons for everything in there. She's got how you would fix it, how you would find it, how you would make sure you had really identified it correctly, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
That's awesome.
Oh, and I just turned the page with roses where you can collect rose hips.
You can collect rose hips, rose petals, a lot of things. Rose hips make wonderful jelly, and it's got a lot of vitamin C in them. Okay. Just like, well, think about it. Rose hips are an apple.
That's right.
They're in the apple family. So crab apples, rose hips, they both make little fruits.
So this is a nice little guide, how to forage for wild foods without dying, an absolute beginner's guide to identifying 40 edible wild plants. If nothing else, it'll tell you that you probably have more to eat in your garden than just in the vegetable garden.
That's true. And also, it'll teach you not to use pesticides and herbicides all over your stuff if you're going to eat it.
Exactly. All right. Let me do the next quote. Take us to the bookshelf. Everyone has enough to do in weeding his own garden. And that is a Flemish proverb.
Isn't that the part about don't look at the stick in your brother's eye when you have a plank in your own?
Mind your own beeswax.
Mind your own beeswax. Keep it to yourself, kitty. Okay, on the bookshelf, Happy Plants, Happy You by Camille Bell Hill, or I assume I said her name right. The subtitle is A Plant Care and Self-Care Guide for the Modern Houseplant Parent. This book is really about self-help through plants. That's how I view it.
Yes. And it's, according to this, I'm looking at it, it's part self-exploration, part houseplant handbook. It's a plant-based roadmap to a happier you. As your plants grow, you will too. Houseplants are a guilt-free path to peace, and the result of stepping into an intentional plant care, self-care routine will be happy plants and a happy you. And the author of this book, she was going to be an attorney, and then she stepped away from that. Her true love is interior design. And now, obviously, houseplants.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was a really fun book. I really enjoyed it. The cover, to me, is not indicative of what's inside particularly. I thought it had a lot more substance. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So the cover is about catching your eye, which I get. But she has a lot of really great information. And it's really about taking care of yourself as you take care of your plants. And I'm actually going to give this to my daughter, Megan, because Megan likes houseplants. Or I might give it to Claire. They both like houseplants. They're in that age group. And not that I don't like houseplants. It's just, I do know how to water them and stuff and take care of them.
Well,
but I think Megan would really enjoy this.
Yeah. Her Instagram, and I looked it up right before we started recording. And I forgot to.
She's famous.
She is famous. She has almost 60,000 followers. And what she also says is that, and her Instagram account is called Plant Blurred, BLERD. And she also has another Instagram account called Black People with Plants. Because
okay, so that's why. So it's like is it like a black nerd, like a plant blurred, you think? I don't know.
Yes.
I mean, I'm guessing on that. I don't know.
But it is, it is really important for you to visualize yourself with the plants. And so she's done a great job. And her Instagram account is beautiful. And some of the plants, oh my gosh.
She has some great plants, some very expensive plants, some very basic plants, easy to grow plants, like the ZZ plant, which I have, and you don't have to water it hardly ever because it's been sitting in my office. I love on page, let me figure out what page this is because it's a full spread. It's page 122 and 123, and it's her window, and she has a whole bunch of Hoyas in this window.
Oh, yeah.
And they're variegated Hoyas that aren't variegated. And she said Hoyas are for sure my favorite plant genus. And she said they're just they're so interesting and unlike any of my other plants. And that's her focal point about practicing ambulatory meditation. So one thing I'm really excited about is that, well, I don't want to get it too complicated. So I'm really excited that she wrote this book. If it reaches a new segment of the population and makes them love plants like her Instagram has done, that just makes me happy, and we do live in a complicated, stressful world, and the news can really make you sad and upset. So if you can go and hang out with an aglaonema or a Hoya or a ZZ plant, because I can't say the name.
Who can? The other thing is, and there really are some good self-care tips in here. Like on page 63, water yourself. So, she talks about the need to be drinking water and how, a lot of people never leave home without their phone. Well, she never leaves home without her water bottle, and how important it is to keep yourself hydrated along with your plants. And
it's just a new take. It's a new take on the whole idea of looking at your plants as a way to take care of yourself, which is amazing, actually.
Yes.
And when I first looked at it, I was like, oh, another houseplant book. But that's not really what it is.
No. This goes much deeper and
much deeper.
Lot more information. And I do like it is Happy Plants, Happy You. She did a good job of combining, as the title says, plant care and self-care.
It's like our other book that we love so much. How to Make a Plant Love You, Tropical Plant Love You.
Tropical Plants and How to Love Them by our friend Marianne Wilburn.
Marianne Wilburn. I knew you'd pick up on it. I was like, oh, do it, because I can't ever get the title.
Anyway.
But yes, it says, in fact, there's a section in this one that is similar to a section in Marianne's book.
The book is Happy Plants, Happy You, a plant care and self-care guide for the modern houseplant parent by Camille Bell Hill. It just came out on September the 5th.
Thanks, Camille.
So in honor of her, you should go out and buy a Hoya and give the Hoya with the book to a budding plant person. Yeah.
Okay, I'll do that because I have two Hoyas. I have a variegated Hoya and one that's not variegated. And the non-variegated one has been out underneath my Japanese maple all summer. It is very happy. I have to bring it in tonight because it's supposed to get cold in the morning. So time to bring it in. Time to bring in my Monstera. Because my Monstera had mealybugs, so I set it outside and started working on it. I think I'm going to get them under control. I hope. Want me to do the next quote?
Yes, please.
The garden is the poor man's apothecary. It's a German saying. And our dirt has to do with this because Carol went and found this quote to go with her dirt, I bet.
I did. Right? I did.
Okay, so I have fallen in love with something new, and I've actually thought about doing a little Instagram post on it. And no, this is not sponsored at all. And no, it's not cheap, but it might save your life and it might save your skin. It'll for sure save your skin. And it's called Supergoop. And Supergoop makes a whole series of sunscreens and moisturizers with sunscreen that are just amazing. And here's why. I hate to wear sunscreen because it is thick and goopy and gross and sticky. Supergoop is none of these things. And they were created by Holly, with help from scientists, by Holly Faggard. And Holly had really bad skin cancer. And so she wanted to develop a line of products that women would actually wear, and men. So anyway, I wear the moisturizer every single day. Right now I have, I have the regular sunscreen, which I wear under my regular moisturizer. I also wear her Glow, Supergoop Glow. And Glow just has a little bit of tint in the moisturizer along with the sunscreen. And it's all 40 SPF. And then I also wear the hand sunscreen because age shows up on our hands and necks before anything else. And so I garden with my, I let it dry and then I wear it. And it has really, really helped my skin. So I wanted to share that.
That's good. I think I'm going to order some because you still need sunscreen in the fall.
And it's very, very thin and you don't use a lot, even though it's not cheap. And I should say, I found out about this because of one of the wives on our motorcycle riding group. We were in Milwaukee and she brought it up to me and she said, do you need some sunscreen? And I kind of made a face and she goes, you should try this. And I'm really glad she did. So thank you, Tammy. I appreciate it.
All right. Let me do the next quote. All gardening is landscape painting. William Kent.
He was an English landscape architect, and he did paint because I've seen Kentian landscapes. So our rabbit holes. You want me to do my rabbit hole?
Yes.
Boy, this is about a lot about books this week. So my rabbit hole is Oklahoma Native Plants by Connie Scothorn. She is an American landscape architect. And she wrote it with Brian Patrick, and he is one too. And I got this book. She was a speaker at the Native Plant Festival that was in Oklahoma City.
Uh-huh.
And the first one, the inaugural one. And she also has this book, and she put it together because if she installs your landscape for you, it is definitely going to be native. She thinks native plants are extremely important to the environment for so many reasons. And also they take less water, stuff like that. But it says and then I wrote down, when defining a native plant, it's good to know whether it's native to your state or your region versus being native to the U.S. only, because just because it's native to Delaware doesn't mean it'll work in Oklahoma City. So I bought this book. I met her. I thought it's a small book, and it's kind of like Ellen's book about, foraging without killing yourself. This is your first introduction to native plants, but it's well researched, and I enjoyed it very much.
Very good. So my rabbit hole is I'm still down in that Gardening Can Be Murder by Marta McDowell. And, it opened up all these mystery books to read. So I finished the second and third Agatha Raisin mysteries. And I had to read the first and the second to get to the third, which gardening featured in prominently. And I guess, gardeners can be pretty competitive. And
oh, no, you're kidding.
And that led to murder.
Well, of course it did.
So thankfully, I think someone else has checked out the ebooks of the fourth and fifth in this series. So Agatha has parked for a while, and I'm down into the Dorothy Sayers, and I've checked out
I love Dorothy
Strong
Sayers.
Poison and The Unpleasantness at the Bellona Club. This time as ebooks and audiobooks. I don't have time to sit around and read forever. And then I kind of got into bats for a little bit because the speaker at Garden Club talked about bats in Indiana. So I wrote a blog post about it. But anyway, bats are good.
Did you know that bats love swimming pools?
I did not know that.
They do. Bats love swimming pools because they use their sonar to bounce off the water. And so when we go over and swim with our friends, Karen and John, the bats come out in the evening and they bounce off the water. And I don't understand how it works, but they swoop right over our heads, and the bats love it. So there you go.
Well,
who knew?
My sister had found a bat next to her door jamb. I talked about that on the podcast. So I showed the guy, and he identified which bat it was. Of course, it's the most common bat in Indiana.
But there you go. I don't know what, I'm sure these are the most common bats in Oklahoma, but they are so fast that you're sitting there in the swimming pool and all of a sudden you just get topped by a bat. It's pretty cool. So garden commissions.
So I'm going to mow and trim right after this podcast, probably. I got to get that vegetable garden cleaned up, and I just ran out of time to get my microgreens started, but that's on my list. And rearranging the sunrooms on the list. Today is like the last warmish day, and then it's going to drop to highs in the high 50s and 60s for the next 10 days. So there'll be time to do stuff indoors. I still have to do stuff outdoors.
We have a howling north wind this morning, and I can hear it outside the window. And so it's going to get cooler here too. I'm going to, that's what I started working on was my greenhouse. I'm going to finish cleaning out my greenhouse and start tucking in my cuttings, because if I don't do it soon, there will be no cuttings. There will be no small plants for next year. And there's several that I need to take cuttings of. So,
well, that is all very good. Let's wrap this thing up. Thank you for listening to The Garden Angelist. I hope you've hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a single episode. We publish every week on Wednesdays at 12 a.m. Eastern Time.
If you listen to Apple Podcasts, we'd love a 5-star review that helps us get noticed by others. Could you also share our podcast with your friends? Word of mouth is still the best way to get the word out there.
And be sure and check out our show notes for links for more information about today's topics, plus links to our own websites.
And subscribe to our Substack newsletter, The Garden Angelist at Substack.com. Also linked to in our show notes. If you do, you'll get a link to listen to the podcast a day early.
And if you want to help support us, use those affiliate links. If you buy something after clicking through on them, we earn a small commission and it costs you nothing. Or you can set up a monthly subscription through Buzzsprout or make a one-time donation through PayPal.
It was lovely to chat with all of you over the garden gate. Bye until next week.
Bye, everybody.